Hello, everyone that's joining us in person today and those that will hopefully be viewing the presentation later. Uh, Today, we're very happy to host Dr. Shirin, who is a visiting professor who's working with Lakehead and has actually given a couple of presentations in the past to our undergraduate students. But we're very pleased today to be able to host a session on writing for academic purposes. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over and let us begin.
Thank you so much, Prof. Meredith, for the introduction. So we have two participants here. We would right away start with them. Yeah, okay, no problem. So as Dr. Meredith said, it is my pleasure to be with you here today to talk about writing academic paper. All right, so let us just adjust my page. Okay. Or maybe I just, okay. So today we want to know how we can be encouraged enough to write our papers, first of all, and send it to journals for publication. Is there anybody here who can tell me what is research, first of all, before everything? Sarah, Fatima, any one of you?
I will say that it does come down, because I'm an editor on a journal that accepts research papers, we often get questions about what constitutes research and what our paper will actually take, because we only take research papers. So we do sometimes get papers that don't fit our criteria. So it is an important question.
Okay, good. So yeah, so research is a process, right? It has few steps to first get your data, analyze your data in order to answer a research question, in order for you to understand. And there is no other way. There is no shortcut in that. But what is a good research? Any opinion? Anything that we gather the data and then we analyze it to answer a question is a good research? Is it publishable? Okay. Okay.
We have timely and ethical from Ariadne and Fatima.
Yeah, but not all things are novel, right? Not everything suits for publication, for journal publication. First of all, it should be novel. Novelty means to be new. Nobody did it before. You are the one who are doing that type of research for the first time, and the question came to your mind or struck your mind for the first time before anybody else, right? So novelty matters. After that, you need to understand the topic, right? How do you understand? By reading a lot. So if you read a lot of papers, then you can come up with the ideas. You can understand the area yourself first, and then you are the one who can perform. You can produce papers. Okay, so if you don't read a lot, don't expect that suddenly you come up with a brilliant idea to write a paper. The other thing which makes a good research is the method, the methodology that you are using. Because if you have a wrong method, then you will get wrong data probably. And after that, how you're analyzing it. If you're not a good statistician, maybe you have to just ask somebody to teach you the ways, or ask somebody who is good in maths to do that. You have to read again. You go back to the very first step. You have to read and find how other researchers, how other expert researchers analyze their data. It would be wonderful for you. It would be like a guide for you to do the same thing. And finally, you can perform, you can act, you can do the same things and produce a good paper. It depends on you how long it may take. right? But if you do all these steps in the procedure well, then you can have it done in a short period of time. But there are some facts that I would like to tell you. This is your research. If you're doing your thesis, for example, you're doing your dissertation, you are the author. So don't expect that your supervisor is the one who has to do everything for you. The supervisor already got her PhD and she did her research before. This is your work. Okay, so you are the one who should read a lot. Don't forget reading. Read a lot, come up with that novel research question, find the gap, and do it yourself. Okay, nobody else is able to do that. And if you do it more, if you try more, then finally you will find your way how to do that. You just need to sacrifice some time and do some probably trial and error, submit your papers just a few times till you learn how to do it. But today I am going to share with you how, so that you don't kill so much of your time in trial and error. Okay, and don't think that, as I told you from the beginning, there is no shortcut. You cannot do it in rush. Okay, it takes time. So just be patient. Do you know, Sarah, Fatima, others, do you know any benefit for active researchers? Is there any benefit for doing a lot of research? Anybody?
You can put up your hand and talk out loud. Keep up with best practice, become familiar in your field. Both good. I think also becoming an expert, but I think also, particularly as students, the benefits of being an active researcher come when you, for example, want to apply for funding.
Oh,
So,
that's a good point. That's
so
excellent.
we had a chat last week about, funding opportunities coming up. And one of the things that they look for is that you're actively involved in disseminating research, whether it's through, an article or whether it's through presentations. But articles have a higher kind of standing than presentations.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Yes, that's great. So it would improve your resume. Then you can get some scholarship, some funding. That's right. If you finish your studies with a list of publications, probably you have more chance for getting an academic job. And maybe you graduate faster because most universities require you to publish at least a paper so that they allow you to go for your Viva session, right? So if you just do it faster, probably your supervisor allows you to graduate faster. And of course, you would feel so confident, you feel better among your other classmates who didn't publish. And I want to give you some suggestions. If you study, like, let's say about 1 hour a day purposefully, only for the purpose of reading academic papers in order to get familiar with the writing style, with the way that they write, with the methods, then it is easier for you to write, to start the initial step to produce your own paper. And then you can find your area of interest. You can know what potential you have, what your potential in which area. Do you prefer to study more or read more papers on, let's say, psycholinguistic side, on the linguistic side, on the teaching side, on teaching to adults, on various areas? Okay, so if you read more, you can detect what you are interested in. And then, of course, you can find the research groups that are working on similar areas. This would make you more energetic, and when you read more, you will be more confident. Then you at the middle of your studies, you don't lose your interest. You don't get tired. You won't be disappointed. Wow, this study is taking so much time, right? Because you are motivated. Okay, tell me, what is the research outcome? What do we call as research outcome? What is the research outcome? Anybody who raised hand maybe can tell me?
I can also read them as they come up. Or do you see typing happening? Insight.
Oh, okay.
Ariadne says insight.
Insights, okay, that's right, that the insight is good. It is something in mental, right? But outcome, something feasible, something that tangible, something that people can see.
Well, and I think this is like the dissemination of research is something that we don't really talk a lot about. I think it's something, particularly when we're reading proposals, that we don't think about. It's one of the hardest parts for me to write in a grant proposal. So what is reasonable research outcome? So we can write papers, and papers reach a certain audience, but it depends on what journal it goes to. And then we have issues around things like paywalls, which but then some journals that allow open access, but then can charge you sometimes up to $5,000 an article to make yours open access if they are not open access. And Fatima says having impact on communities. So having impact on policy, being able to advocate. Sarah brings up the potential for action and change.
That's right. These are some of the outcomes, right? But by outcome, we mean the publication as you just directed, Doctor. Thank you. Yeah, publications can be in journals, as you mentioned. It can be papers that you present in conferences, and it can be patents that you may have, right? But people are going to judge you based on these kinds of outcomes, not the ones that are mental, right? You just told me at the first, some students said that it gives us insight. That's right. It broadens our view, but people want something to see, right? What is the outcome of these 6 months? Why I have to give you this grant, right? Why I have to hire you here? Because of this list of publication that I have. That one is tangible. Then you will feel that you're successful. But being successful researcher doesn't mean that you have to be a good student and you have to just study from morning to night, right? You can get insight by studying also, but there is no outcome of that, right? So if you read a lot, right, and you read a lot of papers, right, you read a lot of journal papers, you can be smart and you can shorten the time of the paper production yourself. Every study, I tell you, cannot be considered as good outcome. You tell me, doctor, I am waking up early in the morning till midnight, I am studying, but my supervisor doesn't recognize it. She doesn't recognize you because you don't provide any outcome. She doesn't see you sitting at home at the library and studying the whole day, but she would see your publication at the end of the semester. Okay, so be smart. And tell me, I think we discussed earlier that why we have to have some publication, and Dr. Meredith covered a bunch of them. So let me also tell you, we want to show our value, right? We want to say that, hey, I am also available. I am also here to give ideas. I have some ideas. Please hear me, right? You cannot just go out in classes in the corridor of the university and say your ideas. But if it is written, if it is online, people would hear your ideas. You can prove yourself. You can say that you have an idea worth sharing. And this is a good justification for your work, the one that you are doing, for your studies, for the degree that you are going to be awarded at the end of your studies, right? And academia will recognize you. You will introduce yourself to the world because your paper, your publication would be online forever, right? Even we have books that were published centuries and centuries ago, and still today we know the authors. So this would happen for your publication as well. And then finally, if you have these outputs, these good outputs or outcomes, I mean, then you can get a future job also, because people will contact you. They know you, they contact you. There are
And,
some.
and sometimes you become infamous. So my supervisor suggested we publish a piece about the claims made by a certain manufacturer when I was doing my dissertation. And at the end of it, we submitted it to a journal and they suggested we allowed that they would have a rebuttal. It was interesting to see their rebuttal, but then it kind of meant, going forward that then your name becomes known. And sometimes that's a good thing. And sometimes, uh, sometimes it makes you a little bit infamous for a while.
That's right. That's right. That is the essence of to be a good writer sometimes. Thank you. Right. Okay. There are some facts. Don't get scared that, oh, I sent my paper already and I couldn't publish it, so I'm not a good writer. I cannot publish. I will not send again. No, everybody can publish. If you are admitted to a study at the graduate level, at the postgraduate level, means that you have the potential and you can publish. Just raise your courage and start writing. And the very first step, please don't forget that one, is just reading a lot of academic papers. By reading, I don't mean read the pages on Google. I don't mean reading, I don't know, blogs. This is not academic. Okay, read a lot of academic papers and then start with high quality journals. Read those papers, because if your standards are high, then you will learn how to produce high quality papers because your eyes are familiar with that type of writing. And I want you to know that yes, the first writing may be time consuming, might look difficult, but once that you started, you will see that for the second and the third, it will give you a sense of enjoyment. You like that, right? You love to write that one. You have this sense of satisfaction of yourself that you could publish in this reputable journal. And please, when you will become an experienced person, share your ideas, like these sessions that we are doing now. And then by telling your friends also, you are adding up to your own knowledge. You share your mistakes together. You will share your way of success to each other. And then you will improve yourself, right? After the first publication, you will see that the next publications are easier. Don't forget that you shouldn't compare yourself with your supervisor, with your senior, with somebody who already got his or her PhD, somebody who is doing his postdoc. Just compare yourself with yourself. Okay, if you are at the beginning of your research, you even didn't start that one, start with reading. Don't give up. Okay, just read that, let's say, about 1 hour a day and try writing. Even if that writing is not for the purpose of publication, first, on the very first step, start typing. Okay, because till you don't start typing, you will not have any manuscript. Okay, if you apply for a job later on after your PhD, you will they would check your CV, and how you can have a more fruitful resume by having the section for the publication, because after your PhD, everybody would get that degree, right? So what is your difference between you and your classmates? Or in the country, there are like maybe, let's say, hundreds of graduates, PhD graduates who want to apply for the job. Why they have to select you? They would select you to be a lecturer, to go for continuing your research in a lab, just because you have to prove that you are able to publish. Okay, because that is the matter really. How do you search? After you read a lot, you have to search for some data, for information, for background research. How do you do that? Where do you search? Anyone who wants to write in the chat box or wants to raise the hand? I just gave you a hint if you remember at the beginning. Do you search in Google? Do you search in Wikipedia? Do you search in newspaper?
Well, I think for our institutions, the best place to start would be the Omni, which is in our library. And so it links 14 libraries or 17 libraries in Ontario. And you could do keyword search. The librarians at both of our campuses will run a session for you on how to do a keyword search and how to use the platform, which is great. I sometimes use Google Scholar to start. I do use the reference lists, as Fatima said, that come from what I've read. And then it's interesting talking about what is legitimate, because there's a whole lot of predatory stuff out there. Sometimes websites like Wikipedia can give you a good place to start. Like they might help you with keywords, but you shouldn't be using them for academic work, obviously. One of my colleagues once had a class and she wanted to teach them why they shouldn't use Wikipedia to source. And so 20 minutes before class, she edited her name into the list of Canadian prime ministers. And it was still up there when class started. I mean, she earned herself a ban from ever editing Wikipedia, but it made a good conversation piece for her students about, the Right Honorable Susanna Wong, the Prime Minister of Canada.
Yeah, you used a very good word. You used the word legitimate. That's right. When you want to search for your academic paper, you have to use academic journals. You have to use academic, or let's say legitimate publishers. Mainly there are some of them that I listed for you. Elsevier is trustable, Springer, Taylor and Francis, Wiley, and so on. And you have to use this academic search engines, right? Wikipedia is not academic. So as Dr. Meredith explained right now, it is not legitimate. It is good for your lay reading if you want to start a class to gain some information. But for your academic writing, you have to give reference to academic papers. So that's some of the good search engines, as Dr. Meredith also said that she would search in Scholar. Google Scholar, yes, it is good. You can also search in Science Direct, which mainly would give you the papers from Elsevier. And also you can just go directly to some specific journals. She mentioned that I would go back to the references and I would see my own citations, and then I would go back to the journals that I used in the paper myself, right? That would be a very good choice. Yeah, brilliant.
And I will say that, so when I finished my master's, I submitted a paper to a journal with my supervisor as co-author based on what was in my master's thesis. And so we did that, where we looked through what journals had posted or had published the papers that I was citing most often, and we went there first. So I sent her the name, and she came back to me and she said, well, now you know, Meredith, there are like tiers of journals. And you kind of picked one here, and my face fell. And she said, no, that's okay. You know, put it there first, reach high. And then, if they don't accept it, they'll give you good feedback, and then you could try different journals. So that also happens. But, if your journals like to see that you're using their content from their journals and promoting that further, because that raises their impact factor too. But that is a good way to consider where you might submit a paper.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for your help. Okay, so as you saw, we have different levels for publication. Remember the outcome that I told you? There are different levels. So for publication, we have index journals and non-index journals. By index journals, we mean these two: ISI journals and Scopus journals. ISI is an institute for scientific, I think, research, Institute for Scientific Information, right? And they categorize or classify journals based on their quality. After that, we have Scopus, which also they are also journals that produce high quality papers. After that, we have the non-index journals, that there are so many, okay? When we say the index journals, means that they have an impact factor, okay? We just classify the ISI journals into 4 quartiles, obviously Q1 to Q4. The very top ranked, the first quartile, are Q1, the higher quality, and then it will go down to Q4. It doesn't mean that Q4 journals are not good, or they are useless, or they are not high quality. They are highest quality, all right? But among themselves, the ranking of Q1 is higher because they have more impact on the society. Maybe the words that they are saying in that particular paper is more emphatic for the society, okay? It has a louder voice. It is more important. That's why it forces to be heard more, okay? And of course, we have papers that would be published in conferences, in some conferences, and in some symposiums that you can just maybe orally let your audience hear your words. Maybe they just publish your abstract, or maybe they don't publish at all. Okay, but anyway, you have these options. You can start with sending your papers for seminars, for conferences, to be able to start writing for journals. My suggestion is that if you want to succeed, to write your papers, just like Dr. Meredith said, that she came out of a paper from her master's work, and she tried to send it to a high quality journal, but the supervisor was hesitant. Why not send it? Once that you send it over there, you are sure that the editor or the reviewer of that journal is a big shot in the field, right? So the comments that you would receive later on would help you to improve your work. Even if they don't publish your work, by the time that you just rectify your problems, you correct your mistakes, or you improve your writing, then you would be able to publish your work in another journal. That is a great thing to do. Somebody wants to add up something? All right. So let us see the comparison between these two types of journals, index journals and non-index journals. In terms of academic value, you tell me which one is has higher value, index or non-index? You remember? Mm-hmm.
I would say index, but I think it also depends on your field. So there is an argument to be made that sometimes up and coming journals that are in areas that are not traditionally deemed to be not that are new and upcoming areas may uh, may have more value to their audience than indexed, because index papers might gatekeep certain topics. But I would say normally indexed. If you're going particularly for what here we at Lakehead call PTR, promotion, tenure, and review, you're looking at index journals.
Yes, I totally agree with you about the new journals that are going to be born, or the journals that are just few years old. That's right, I agree. But in general, generally speaking, yes, Dr. Meredith is totally correct. Most of the time, the index journals produce higher quality papers. In terms of payment, in the index journals, most of the times you don't need to pay. But again, as Dr. helped me, yes, for some non-index journals, you have to pay for your publication. How about the time? How much time does it take for you to publish in an index versus non-index journal? What do you think? Can you produce your paper or publish your paper in an index journals quickly?
It really depends. Each journal has a different turnaround time.
Yeah, it takes time. Yeah, it takes time, that's right. But for non-index journals, since you paid, and most of the time it is like a business. I'm not saying every time, right? But most of the time there are some new journals that are not indexed at all, and they are produced only for the purpose of earning some money for those editors. Okay, in that case, once that you send the paper to them, it takes a way too short a time for them to produce your paper or make it online. Whereas on the index journal, you may wait for the editors, for the reviewers to come up with the corrections. You have to make the corrections. It takes time, right? It may take like maybe up to a year, right? Depends on which journal you're sending. So for the peer review, it means that you are judged, you are your paper is going to be read by some experts. In index journals, definitely there are like about 3 or sometimes 4 experts in the field that would read your paper and provide comments for you. But in case of non-index journals, most of the time nowadays, they have this peer review policy, but sometimes maybe they don't. For the citation chance, citation means once that others would use your work or give reference to your work. Okay, what do you think? How about this one? In index, if you publish your work in index journals, you can get more citations, or you publish in non-index journals. Any idea, maybe any guess?
I have a guess.
Tell us.
I think you get more in an index journal. You have a better chance of your work being shared.
That's
Um,
excellent.
there's a lot of danger around non-indexed journals, particularly there's, you know, with the advent of the internet and not having to pay for journals, like to print them and distribute them, there's a lot of what we call predatory journals who are preying on this requirement for publishing that academics run into when they are trying for advancement. Um, and that's why we always recommend that if you're being asked to pay to publish your journal, really think carefully, your article, really think carefully about that, because there are a lot of places that will just publish anything. And and then and that's taking advantage of particularly early career researchers.
That's excellent. I totally agree with you. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you. I don't feel alone with you here, Dr. Meredith. Okay, so let me tell you, let's go to the steps of publication. Now that we know all the different types of journals, now we want to start publishing our results, right? Don't ever forget that you have to always ask the opinions of some expert. This expert mainly can be your supervisor at the university. He can be your colleague at the school if you're working, your classmates. They can come up with good ideas. But please always first discuss the suitable journal to send your paper, okay? And prepare your draft. Okay, so you already have your data, you analyzed it, you came out with the results. Now is the time for you to come up with the draft. For sure, you cannot, you have a 150 page or 200 pages of your thesis. You cannot send 200 pages for a journal, right? You have to come up with a draft. The draft should be shorter. You have to summarize. It takes time, right? Find this suitable journal. Check out the papers that are published in that journal. Prepare your draft based on the format of that journal. And then, of course, it takes time. As I told you, it may take like 1 to 3 months, let's say, because you have to summarize your work, you have to check the layout and prepare all the tables or figures suitable for that journal. And this may take time, right? It is not, as I told you, you remember I said that there is no shortcut. It may take time. After you submitted your work, again, you have to wait like few months, up to a year maybe, to get acceptance. After you get the acceptance, it doesn't mean that tomorrow it is online. Right now we are in September, but since last June, I have a paper that is accepted for 2024, for next year. Okay, so again, you have to wait for the whole paper to come online. Now the abstract is on, but then later, next year, your published work would be online. Okay, so don't get agitated. Don't be hasty. You remember, it takes time. Now you want to know where you have to publish. I told you to ask your advisor, ask somebody who constantly publishes in different journals. They can give you good ideas. They would check your papers and they would say to which journal they can be suitable for. And maybe they have some contacts that can, for example, your faculty produces a journal. That would be a good way to start, right? Then you can also, just like Dr. Meredith gave us the example of her master's paper, yes, you can go to your reference list and check which journals did you cite, which journals you're going to give credit because of your paper. They would be more willing to publish your work for sure. And yeah, from your literature, from the similar published papers, you read a lot to write that manuscript, isn't it? The very first step, you remember what it is? It is reading and reading and reading. So once that you read a lot of literature, you read the past work, you read the published papers, that already published papers, you will know how it will work, where, in which journals they published. Most probably, the editors of that particular journal is interested in the topic. So you can send your paper to that particular journal. There are some lists provided by Elsevier or Springer that you can key in the keywords, and then they will easily give you a list of suitable journals for you. That would also add sense of consideration. You can check them out also. So submission steps is, you remember I told you research is a procedure. It has few steps. Submission also has some steps. The very first step is obviously to sign up in the journal website. In the most reputable journals, you would sign up on the website. And rarely you would find some maybe non-index journals that you have to send your manuscript through email. Okay, but most of them these days, you have to sign up in the website and submit it online. Once that you submit, this is the editorial office that would receive your paper. And there they would check the language, first of all, the language of your manuscript, the scope, and the format. Okay, so the language of your paper is important. Don't tell me that I am a native speaker, my English is excellent. Right, you are. But sometimes you are just typing quickly and then you don't notice, or this word processor has its own auto typing, and you will see that it would correct your word or changes your word to a totally different word, but because your focus is on typing, you don't notice that. Okay, always check the language. The word choice really matters. If it is not in the scope, if your manuscript is not in the scope or the domain of that journal, they would send it back immediately. Okay, after a few hours, they would send it back, or the day after, they would send it back to you. And always read the guide for authors on the website of the journal and check how your format should be. The acceptable format is always written on the guides for authors. All right, read it out before wasting your time, because if you just send it and the editorial office send it back, it is your time that would be killed. All right, if everything is okay, let's say that okay, they didn't send your paper back, or even they send it, you fixed it and you just submit again. Now is the time that your paper would be received by the editor. Okay, here is the time that the editor would check the quality of your paper, right? Till now, only the mechanics of your paper would be checked by the editorial office, right? But once that your paper is with the editor, he or she is the one who would check the quality of your paper. And then he or she would assign like about up to 4 reviewers to give comments on your work. This is the time that we technically call it under review. We say that the paper went under review. After they give the review, they will make their first decision. The first decision is always minor revision, major revision, or rejection. It is never a straight over acceptance. Okay, because there are like about 3, let's say, reviewers, and that they may have different opinions. So at least there are like a bunch of comments that they may give you to make on your paper. Then they will give you like about, let's say 1 to 3 months, about 2 months to correct your paper. It depends from a journal to another. So they give you some time to make the changes. Okay. After that, you have to send back your paper. They would send it again to the reviewers, or sometimes the editor himself or herself would check if they are not so many comments. They would check, and then at this time they would say that yes, it is ready for publication, it is accepted, or again they would give you some minor corrections. Most of the time at this time, if you don't justify your your comments, the comments that they gave you, you don't correct it well, most good quality, high quality journals would reject it, okay, because every day they are receiving like, let's say, tens or maybe hundreds of papers, and they don't want to waste their own time for sending, and this correspondence take a lot of time, right? So they would just ignore your paper, they just reject it. So make sure that you will respond very politely to every and each comments that are made. If in case they give you, let's say, for example, in the worst scenario, the major revision with, let's say, 50, 60 comments, and out of these comments, with one, not more, please, okay? With one you don't agree, you have to justify that why academically, why scientifically you believe that it is this way, not the other way that you got the comment, okay? But always be polite. This is the steps of submission. All right. Any
And
questions?
and I will say that, you know, you don't necessarily, so we want the work to still be your work. So sometimes when reviewers read, they read it with their lens of their experience and their background, and sometimes you might be asked to make a change that you really don't agree with. But it's good to provide either a chart or a document outlining how you addressed the and whether you chose to address the feedback. So it is legitimate to say, I considered this, but it's outside the scope of what I was able to do in my study. And then that's being open about it. Or, you know, we had a reviewer for a dissertation, their background was really strong, but they were in a slightly different, like, theoretical approach to it. And so, you know, when the feedback is, you know, it's good feedback, but it doesn't necessarily fit with the author's intent. So at that point, you may need to think about, I mean, you can definitely justify it and say, you know, it doesn't really fit with what I see for the journal, because the reviewers won't know who you are and you won't know who they are. As a journal editor, I can see everybody that's on the process, but you wouldn't be able to. So it's always best to be polite, because you never, well, and respectful, because you never know whether someone then is attached to another journal or another, right? So even though sometimes you get the feedback and it's kind of, it's your work, and, you know, you feel that it would, but by and large, most reviewers want to help you and help you to be able to present your work in the best possible light.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly correct. So as Dr. Meredith says, that's right. That expert, most of the time, that reviewer is the, let's say, the so well known in his or her own field, and the lens that he or she is looking to your work is different. That's very correct. So you have to consider, you have to check that one correctly. Most probably to a higher degree, that might be correct. But again, if you don't agree or disagree, you think that this is novel, it was never done before, just try to read more. Maybe you come up with the same idea. Otherwise, you have to justify your work very politely, right? And write that from this perspective, I think that this should be done like this way, and I use this and this and this and these references for that, just to justify that very professionally. All right. Thank you so much for the very good, useful comment. Thank you so much. Yeah, so there are some procedures for submitting. Yeah, these were the submission of the paper, but submitted papers are anonymous, as just Dr. Meredith mentioned. Yes, nobody knows who is the writer or who is the reviewer. Only the editor knows. So once that you submit your work, you have like your manuscript without name, and you have to cover, you have to provide another first page with the title, with your full name, with your affiliation, and then maybe the abstract. Okay, you submit these two documents separately, and the one without the name, the manuscript without the name, would be sent to the reviewer or the experts in the field. Okay, so everything is anonymous.
And can I also add that if you're using Microsoft Word and you go under options and then there's I think it's proofing there. Anyways, or it's one of the save options, but you should also remove all of your all of your metadata from the paper. So it will, for example, say that the author was Meredith Lovell-Johnston, but when you save it, I can send a save file. When you go save as, one of the options that you would want to do is make sure that you remove all of that data about who the author is, because otherwise it's not really blind review.
That's correct. Yeah, it would not be blind review, and maybe the reviewer would be biased sometimes, and we don't want that, right? Thank you so much. Correct. So how do you think you can increase, with all these stories that I told you today, how do you think you can increase your chance of publication? Do you have any idea? Did you ever thought of that? Okay, I tell you, I give you some ideas. Of course, the first thing, be novel. If you are novel, for sure you will find a journal to be interested in your work. Okay, because it is new. It is new finding. It can help to expand the body of knowledge. It can help humanities, right? Your design. If the design suits with the design or format of the journal, if you have comparisons of your work with the other published work, it is not only or solely your own work and your own results, but you compare, right? There is a comparison, and maybe the works, the works with the papers in the same journal or even in other journals. Your abstract and conclusion is the most important paragraphs of your paper, because the first judgment comes from reading the abstract and conclusion. Rarely people read the literature review or the rest, right? But once that they want to read a paper to see if they are interested in that or not, they would read the abstract. If they see that, wow, this is nice, they would read the conclusion, and then if it is so engaging for them, they would read the rest of the paper, right? So these two, you have to have an art. You have to practice so much to write perfect abstract. I will tell you later how to write and what things you have to mention in each one of them. And of course, writing quality. You remember I told you, I keep telling you, always give your paper to an expert, to a classmate, to a friend. to a native speaker, it doesn't mean that native speaker is necessarily reading better than you, but they might always two brains work better than one, isn't it? Or from another perspective, they would look at your paper from another angle that you didn't look at it that way, right? So always give it to somebody else, a probable reader, somebody who would be interested in your piece of work, so that they would read and give comments and fix your mistakes. All of us make mistakes, right? Don't feel shy. Just share it with your friends, your colleagues. Let them read it once. You will be amazed how minute typos or mistakes they would find for you, that you would also laugh at yourself, how I made this mistake, right? Okay. Academic paper, as I told you earlier, consists of these few entries. Abstract. It is up to 250, from 100 to 250, 200 words. So as I just mentioned, you should have an art to write it. Then we have introduction. Most of the time you have to write you have to introduce the problem statement. You have to say the aim of this writing. You have to say the significance of this study. And sometimes you write the literature review or the background here in introduction. And sometimes, depending on the journal, you have a separate entry for literature review. Okay, so you have introduction, then you have literature review. Next, you have your methods. Here you will write the participants, the location, the methods, the instruments, the tools that you used. After that comes the results and discussion. Here you have the comparison. You have to provide other resources. You have to cite other works. You have to compare your work here mainly. And then you have conclusion at the end. Conclusion is also very short, like 1 or 2 paragraphs. And here is the summary of your whole work, right? You will give only the important results. Here there is no number. All the numbers are in the results or discussion. Here there is no citation. All the citations are in the result or discussion, just the same as abstract. And finally, which most of the times our students forget as a part of a research paper, is the reference, right? So for the reference of, let's say, about 10 or 12 pages paper, it is good to have like 3 to 50 references. There is no particular rule or law about that, I tell you. Yeah, but it is recommended not to have so many, because if you have so many, means that for every single word in your text you give a reference. It is not like that. You have to give reference for ideas in your paper. Okay, and most journals would accept a limited number of words. Okay, you cannot exceed more than 600 or 6,000 or maximum 7,000 maybe words in a journal. Okay, so try to revise everything, summarize everything before you send. Let me tell you exactly what you write in each part. For abstract, these are the important things. You have like about a paragraph of 200 to 250 words, isn't it? You have to write why you are doing this research, why this research is important, how you are doing it. So why means your aim, means your problem, your statement of the problem, your significance, right? Why it is important to do. How? It is the method. How you are doing it. You are doing it based on this method, using this instrument, this questionnaire, this interview, this number of people, these are my participants. You will write, right? And what you obtained, this is the result. This is a conclusion, right? It is the final conclusion in just one word. And maybe you want to add up that this is a good guide for the future research as well, right? So all of these would make easily would fill these 200 words for you if you practice writing. Again, as I told you, no reference here, no direct numbers or result here. Second, you will, by the way, don't forget, you write abstract finally. Means that once that your paper is ready, you are about to submit your work, it is at that time that you write your abstract. It doesn't mean that because abstract is at the beginning, you are going to write the abstract first and then you write introduction. No, it is vice versa, right? So you start from literature review, probably maybe from introduction, and then you go on and write abstract finally, once that you have all these data analyzed and you have all the discussions ready and you got your conclusion. Okay, to cut a long story short, when you go to introduction, you have to write, I guess you know already, you write problem statement, you write why your study is significant, you write some related background studies sometimes, right? Sometimes you have a separate entry, as I told you, as the literature review, and you end it with your research question. What is your aim? Why you are doing this? What is it? And please always have that one in your mind. You are doing this research to get the answer for this question. You remember my very first slide? I told you what is research. Research is to answer a question, right? So you don't want to, many researchers do that, particularly younger researchers. They start doing a research and then finally they diverge their way to other things. Yeah, always have this question, the aim in your question. Methods. What do we want to have in the methods? We have to write all the details. It should not be general. All the details should come in the methodology part. As I told you, write about the instruments, interview, questionnaires, surveys, number of people, maybe their gender, maybe their age, whatever that is important must be written here in detail. Okay, we don't want general information, should be in detail. Next, we have results. Okay, now I got the data. I know how to analyze my data because I have my methods. Now I have to come up with the results. Here you will explain all your results, the result that you got, and you compare it with the literature review that you studied before, that you read before. You make comparisons. It is better for you to give reference to the same references that you had in your literature review. Okay, sometimes not, but mostly if you give reference to the ones that you already mentioned in your literature review, in your background, then you will see consistency in your work. You will see the stream of your research is going on perfectly. Yeah, you are not jumping to other works, others' works, right? So explain your own results. You want to your research to be heard. So please don't repeat literature review here. Okay, just give point tips. Here you have to have scientific reasons, okay, and you have to compare your work. I just mentioned that. Okay, this part result probably would be the lengthiest section of your paper because you want to show all the details that you came up with. Okay, these are your own results. These are your own discussions. Finally, in conclusion, the word conclusion means summary. Okay, this is the summary of the whole work. Here you will write the most significant results because the results would be, you remember I told you it is the lengthiest part. You don't want to copy and paste it again in conclusion. Only the significant results. Remember the research question in introduction? You want to answer that, right? So you did all these discussions to answer that single question, right? So in conclusion, you want to answer that research question only. Don't repeat all of the results here. No number, no percentage, no citations. Just give your conclusion. Based on this result, it seems that it is like this and that, right? So answer your question here in conclusion. After that, you can give people can see your contribution to the study. You can recommend future works as well. Okay, so this study was done probably in this state with, let's say, EFL students. It can be done by ESL students as well. Maybe the results would be different, right? You can just recommend others to expand research. Maybe you did it with Aboriginal people, and now you may want to think what the result might be with foreigners, right? Maybe they're different. Maybe the ones that, for example, English is not their first language. You want to do the same study with others. You will give hint to other researchers here. So totally it will be like 1 or maximum 2 paragraphs. Is this clear for everyone? Any questions so far? I can continue. All right, so let's go on. You remember I told you always keep the question in your mind, research question in your mind. I recommend you, that is what I did when I was doing my first research. I had a sticker and I wrote my thesis statement, which is the research question in front of me. And every day when I was searching and I was reading, I would try to read the relevant papers. You remember Dr. Meredith also told us we have to check the keywords when we want to search for the good, let's say, data to read or good papers to read. We would search for good keywords, right? So don't read something else. Don't think that anything that you download, you have to read that one. Maybe you download, maybe it seems interesting paper, but it is not relevant to your research question. Always keep it in your mind, okay? And be motivated, because this is the only time that such a research is being done. Otherwise, it is not a research, right? Because it was a question that was solved before. But this is a research question because nobody asked it before. So be motivated. Don't think that it is not important. My research is not important. Your research is always important. Another thing that you have to have in your mind is the objective of this research. The goals, what goals you have of doing this research. What are you trying to do? Why you are trying to answer this question? This may show your real contribution. If you answer this question, it would be worthy, how it would help the society, how it would help the body of knowledge, right? What is your contribution? How it can be significant? Always in the process of doing your research, try to ask yourself these questions. Because if you forget the very first question, I told you, you diverge your way. You cannot get a healthy conclusion. You cannot give us a good answer for your initial question. A good paper consists of few things. Obviously, you need a good title. You probably write your good title at the end, because constantly this title might be changed, right? During the time that you are writing your paper, you write it in a way, then you fix it, then you will come up with a better word to add up, right? So you shouldn't forget that a good title is not 2 lines, right? It should be short and sweet. Yeah, write it briefly, and it should be informative.
Yes. Sorry, I'll add to that. So if your paper should give readers in the area, like the title should, that's the first thing we search by, right? When we do a keyword search and, oh, this sounds good. It lists the keywords, or, you know, it's descriptive of what it's about. And I was in the habit of making cute titles when I was doing my master's, and I learned about not doing cute titles because descriptive titles are better because they get more people will read them, and it's much more successful.
That's very right. Thank you so much. Very good point. Yeah, you have to really use these points that Dr. Meredith would once in a while just tell us. That's really so much. Absolutely, it is correct. Because once that others want to enter any keyword, after we publish our work, we want our paper to come up, right? So you have to use these keywords in a way in your title so that people can find your paper easier. Thank you so much. Very good point. Thank you so much. Yeah. Next point of a good paper is nicely written, right? Again, don't think that, okay, I am doing my master's in English. My English is good enough. I got 8 in my IELTS. Yeah, it's not like that. Write it nicely. It's still today, I tell you, every month I get papers to review and I see, I don't know how it works. I see these are probably postgraduate students that they write one full paragraph, one sentence, right? It is not understandable. So don't make your writing difficult to read. Okay, write it nicely. And then, as I told you, you want to turn your thesis, your dissertation to a paper, right? That is the first research that you do. So probably you don't want to send 100 pages of your thesis to the journal. The length should be okay. You cannot write, let's say, 50 words. You cannot just copy and paste 50 pages, 30 pages of your thesis and directly send to a journal. Length matters because journals also have limited pages. And of course, your references that you give should be relevant and they should be recent. I tell you what is the meaning of relevant. Means that you shouldn't say that based on this study, this is the fact, right? And then when you go back to data study, you will see that they never talked about that, right? The reviewers would check it out. So don't give irrelevant papers as your references if you didn't read them. Okay, and now we are in 2023. Probably if you start now your paper and you send any paper, it would be published in 2024. So please don't send any references, don't write any references from the previous century, 1990 something, right? At the time that you were not even born. It is so old, it is obsolete. Mm-hmm. You want to add up something, Dexter?
No, 1990s is not old, but anyways, yes, it is important to be recent and be relevant. There's a lot of things that have gone through the education field where people have used secondary sources, so they relied on someone else's interpretation of a primary source. And there are a lot of misconceptions that go around, particularly, for example, in Vygotsky's work, which is central to education, and it's been mistranslated, misused. It's best to go to the original and then also talk about, how it's recently been used to show that it's still relevant.
That's right. Yes, I agree with you. If you have like, as I told you, let's say about 50, 30 to 50 references. If you have like less than 5 or 6 or maybe even less than 7 of them from 1990s, that's okay. But majority of the references that you provide must be recent. Okay, because if your study is based on old ideas, maybe since then somebody else did a research like yours, right? So maybe your research would not be authentic or would not be accepted in highly ranked journals. They would say that this is old. But if it is most of them, right? If most of them are recent, they see that, okay, you gave references from 2023, you gave references from 2022. This is up-to-date data. Use them and try to read new papers, read recent works, okay? Writing a paper requires reading and reading and reading. Once that you are logging in the keywords, you can set to suggest you the recent papers, for example, from 2010 onwards, okay, or from 2015 onwards, from 2000 onwards, okay. You can just change the dates. So use those, let's say, tools. Abstract and conclusion, and also the title. I think I talked about the title. Yeah, abstract and conclusions are very important. As I told you, you have to practice writing different abstracts, imaginary abstracts. Okay, try to practice by yourself that you are doing this research, and try writing abstracts. You didn't do the research, but you just want to practice how to write abstract, because the editor would definitely judge your work on the very first side based on your abstract first. Okay, so practice so that for your own manuscript you can come up with a good abstract. The results also should be good enough. It means that if you have some discussions, you make sure that you have something new to say and you compare your work, okay? And you are critical. How you can be critical? By comparing your work with others. How you can do that? By reading a lot. So again, I am going back to my very first word. Doing research means reading a lot, okay? Till you don't read a lot, you cannot write well, okay? There are some common mistakes that usually people make in writing, and that is about plagiarism, that I'm sure that all of you know what it is all about. It is copying and pasting. We don't have such students here in Lakehead or Windsor University or Brook. I'm sure we don't have. And then again, I told you about these short and long stories. You should be logical. A length of, let's say, 1 line to a line and a half, it would be good. It is understandable. If you make it lengthier, maybe I lose the idea till I reach to the end of the sentence, okay? And please, if you don't know the meaning of a word, don't use that. Use the correct conjunctions, right? Because if the language is not to the level of publication, at the editorial office, before it is sent to the editor, it would be rejected. And that is not what you want, right? So the practice having a good writing style. You can improve your writing always by sharing your paper with your classmate, with your colleague, with your trusted person, to read it again once more. Okay, these are the mistakes that many people may not do, may make. Now let's check what we have to do before submission. Of course, again, we don't want any errors. You have to check for grammar, for spelling mistakes, for the language. You see how much I emphasize on that, because you want your paper to be reached by the editor. If it is high quality, you don't want the editorial office just send it back because the mechanics of your paper doesn't suit well, right? So you have to make your manuscript based on the format of the journal. If you just submit it with your own format, and you don't make it with the format of the journal, it is a big chance that they send it back and you lose your time. Sometimes they fix the format, right? So you shouldn't worry about it. But it is better because it gives this good first impression that you already prepared the paper based on the format of the journal. How you can get the format? You go to the guide for authors. It is written over there. Am I too fast for you guys? Is it okay? You are with me? I hope that I am not too fast. Okay, and then please don't forget that you have to be careful about the figures or tables in the right shape. Again, like the format, some journals, they would fix them themselves, but you don't need to worry so much about them and spend so much time on it. But if it is a necessity for you to send your manuscript with the correct or the desired format of the journal, do it so before they send it back, because you want to reduce your paper publication process, right? You want to make it shorter. I always recommend you to write a cover letter. It is not necessary, but sometimes it is good that you write. It is like applying for a job that you send your resume, but it is recommended that you write a cover letter. In the cover letter, you write about your strengths. Here is the same. You write a cover letter and you write about the strengths of this paper, the novelty of this paper, how it suits to be one of the papers in this journal, how it is in the scope of this journal, right? How you try to use the other papers that were published here. Just show them clearly to the editor so that they can recognize it. Okay, you can also list some reviewers. You tell me that, Doctor, I don't know reviewers, how I can? Of course you know. You started reading papers and then you started writing. Those papers that you read are good sources for your reviewers. You can choose papers that you selected for as your sample, right, as your guide to write your own paper, and just mention the name of that author as your reviewer. That reviewer would be pleased to read your paper and see that, oh, somebody else, a new researcher, another researcher is writing a paper which is in my field that I just wrote 2 years ago, 10 years ago, right? So you can use those reviewers because you know that if your paper is sent to this particular reviewer, she would not reject you because you used her own paper, isn't it? Maybe she would give you for sure some comments to improve, right? But then you reduce the risk of rejection for yourself. Don't ever forget that especially in high ranked journals, in high quality journals, the name of the author should be spelled correctly, the order of the names and their emails should be written correctly. Some journals are strict in changing the names or even a spelling of the names, and you cannot change the order, or you cannot decide who would be the corresponding author. So make sure that from the beginning it is correct, on the correct order. But in some journals, they are not strict. You can even add another name or delete a name. But again, you have to justify that one. Okay, there are some do's that I would like to let you know for selecting your journals. Of course, the very first thing is asking your supervisor, your colleagues, your friend, those people who already published elsewhere before you, and they can give you ideas, and you can consider their favorite journals because they see that their other students, their other colleagues, other people are publishing in that journal, or it is in this directly in the scope of what you are working on, right? They can give you suggestions. You can also consult online. You can Google, you can just write papers invited.com, and they will give you some relevant journals for you. You can look in the you can look for the journals that, as I told you, published similar work. Yeah. And what is the last one? Consider the average reader. Oh yes, you can consider the reader of the selected journal. You can ask other, let's say, classmates, colleagues, people, faculty members, what is their interested journal, right? Normally, in which journal they would prefer to read. For example, I love System. System is the name of one of the highly ranked journals, ISI journals. And once in a while, I just go online before I just search in Google Scholar, in Science Direct. I just go there and check out the new papers or recent papers that is published there, right? That is my favorite journal. So you can ask your other colleagues if there is any favorite journal so that you can have more readers. Other things that I would like to let you know is to select automatically the journal with the highest impact factor. You remember I told you, you want to select the highly ranked journals to get their comments to improve your work. So if you are on the very first steps of your research, then it is also advisable for you to, even though that you know that you may get rejection, you send your paper over there, because by the time that you get the comments, you will drastically improve your paper, and you can definitely be sure that you are going to publish this work elsewhere. Okay. And you can also select automatically the journal that accepted your colleague's paper, because you know that this journal is active. They tell you that, okay, they have publication 6 times a year. They have publication. They are quarterly. They publish like every 3 months. So you know that they are fast publications probably. Yeah. Other things, please find future readers to judge. Of course, I told you many times you can ask the readers who are interested in your work. You are working in a research group together, and you came up with a research paper. You know that people in this research group are interested in the in this area, in this particular area. Share your paper with them and ask them where would they send their paper. They would come up with great ideas for you, right? And another great option for you to send your journal is those study in results section. You remember your discussion section where you compared your study with those studies. The journal that those papers were published are good choices. Okay, you can send your papers over there because you know that the editors are interested in those types of journals. You increase the chance of your publication this way. Again, and then this is just to conclude the things that you have to do for the journal selection. You don't forget your cover letter, even if it is not required, but have it, prepare it. Sometimes they ask for that. Some journals, highly ranked journals, they would ask for that. Otherwise, you just do this extra step, show your interest to the editor. Okay, prepare this. It is like one paragraph, right? Justify why this paper is good to be published here. Prepare like a 1 or 2 paragraph as a cover letter for yourself, and give good impression, right, to the editor. Read carefully. right? Read carefully the information of the guides for author. Maybe you have to select some sorts of margins or fonts, right? Make the required changes before you send. You want to save time. Again, if they send you some comments, try to do all the, most of the comments, all the comments. Okay, better to say all the comments and do all the requirements before you submit. It would save you so much time. And then, of course, again, English, right? Improve your writing style. Don'ts. I told you do's, what you have to do, how you can select your journal. What is the don'ts? Please don't try to choose a journal which is out of the scope of your work. You are writing a paper on, let's say, teaching English, but you are sending your paper to maybe psychology journals. It is irrelevant. It is out of scope. Okay. Another thing, please don't wait for so long for you to write your first manuscript, because after your studies, maybe you you lose your interest. Maybe you start working and you don't have time. So when you are during your studies, right, or just a little bit after that, try to send your paper. Once that you get the result, you get your paper, you will be so happy of yourself. You will be so confident of yourself. Maybe with that paper, you can apply for your PhD, for other grants, for getting funds, for getting a job, right? So don't wait for long. Time is gold. Time is precious. Don't spoil your time with detailed editing. Don't be so meticulous about, don't be so perfectionist. Okay, just try to send your first draft. If there is anything else that should be rectified, should be corrected, the editors would let you know in the comments. Okay, or even while your paper is under review, maybe you can revise it another time yourself, right? But don't spoil your time. And once that they give you the comment, they tell you, okay, you have time till 20th of September. Don't wait till 15th of October. You say that, oh, I am not satisfied with this version. I will send it later. No, they are not waiting for you. You have deadlines. There are other people who send their papers to this particular journal, and they want to reach their own deadline, right? They are publishing quarterly, every 4 months, every 6 months, and they have also deadlines, right? Once that you pass the deadline, your paper is rejected, right? So another point also that I have to mention that is that submit the same draft. Please don't submit the same draft to other journals. Why is it so? You maybe tell me that, okay, other journals doesn't know. Yes, they would clearly know, because you are writing this paper in this particular field. You are sending it to journal A. The editor in journal A would detect, let's say, a reviewer who is an expert in this field, and then you will send it to journal B, and the editor in this field knows that that particular reviewer is also very expert, right? Is expert in the field. So would send your paper to the same person. And that reviewer would write to both journals that I received the same manuscript from both of you. Right away, you would be rejected, and maybe there is a high chance that your name would be blacklisted, and for a year they penalize your publishing from your work. They penalize you. So don't do that. Mhm.
I will say it's very serious. So it's fine to change your mind about submitting to a specific journal. You write to them, you say, I've reconsidered, please withdraw my draft. Or if you've received a notification from the editor that your paper is being rejected, then it's free and clear. But you have to sign an acknowledgement for most journal sites that what you are submitting is not under review anywhere else. And if you are not truthful about that, that has very serious consequences.
Yeah, that's right. Don't jeopardize your future. Okay. As Dr. Meredith said, it is really serious. Don't forget that one. Okay, there are some reasons for rejection. Some of these reasons are so easy and people can get trapped, they can get trapped into them just so easily, right? You may not even think that this may cause for your rejection. First of all, choose the right scope for your paper. The scope of the journal and the scope of your paper should match. Otherwise, if it is, as I told you, if it is a psychology journal and you know that they publish the psychology works, why you have to send your paper over there, right? The poor writing, English, they would reject it right away. So improve your writing style, your typos that you have, I don't know, the spelling, the word choice, the sentences, the structures, right? And sometimes you are, as a second language speaker, sometimes you may use, let's say, words that are popular in British English, right? And then you will use another word that is particularly used in American English, let's say, and you are not consistent. You keep changing. This would also be a problem. That's why we always recommend researchers to send their papers to a native speaker so you can see this consistency. Okay. Of course, your paper should be original, right? And you shouldn't plagiarize. You know this yourself. No need for further discussion about that. If there is no novelty in that, of course they would know, because somebody who is an editor read for sure more than me and you, right? So all her life, all his life, every day, she's reading these recent papers. She knows what is novel. And please, if you feel that you don't have enough results, you didn't compare well, and you need some more elaborations or more data to get the proper result, please do so before you send your paper. The other problem is lack of scientific gap, right? There are mistakes sometimes by authors. The results are not analyzed correctly. If there is like that, for example, in quantitative analysis, you see that the alpha Kronbach, for example, right, is so high. You know that there is a problem here, right? There is a scientific problem here. So rectify it, because don't think that, okay, maybe they don't understand. They for sure understand it. Then they would reject your paper. If there is a scientific gap in the results section, the conclusion would come out wrongly, right? So select a good method, analyze your work scientifically to get a correct conclusion. And please, again, don't provide irrelevant references. As I told you earlier, you may give reference to someone, some work, but you didn't read it at all. And that work, that particular work, is irrelevant to your work. Don't give those references, right? Don't think that, okay, I just write this author because it is recent. I just write this paper because it is recent. And then the reviewer finds no similarity of any sort between your work and that work that you gave as the reference. Okay, this would cause your rejection, because it means that you didn't read that paper on the very first step. And poor response to reviewers. If they send you an email, you have to be available to respond that email. Okay. If they send you comments, you have to be able to answer those comments. Okay. You have to make the changes according to the comments. Otherwise, if you get comments, doesn't mean that your paper is published. It is accepted. Okay. When you get rejected, what you have to do? Don't be sad. It's not the end of the world. It was an experience, and we learn through experience. We become successful by such experiences, right? Be optimistic. This is this is something that helps you to learn how to improve yourself and how to write a better paper. Consider your another journal to send your paper. This is once that you are rejected, okay? It is not to send it, as Dr. Meredith said, at the same time. You don't do that. Once that your paper, processing of your paper with one journal is over, you are allowed legally to send your paper elsewhere, okay? And of course, those comments can help you to improve your paper and send it to another journal. Do it again. Finally, you can publish it somewhere. Okay, just Dr. Meredith told us she wanted to publish her master's paper in a high quality journal, and then the supervisor disagreed, but then said that, okay, let's try. And then they tried elsewhere, and then they published it. Yes.
Oh, yeah, we got it there the first time, but the second time I
Wonderful.
submitted to them, the paper came back with so only the first time, but the second time I tried, they said no.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. Yeah. For you guys, if in case you got rejected on the very first journal, okay, that we have like hundreds of journals sent elsewhere, right? And if you get the rejected, please don't kill yourself. Don't commit suicide. It is not the end of the world. Don't give up. Just keep trying. Okay. And if you are not rejected and there is no response for your acceptance also, don't think that your paper is accepted. You already sent your comments and you are not rejected yet. Also, you are not accepted. Don't call your friends for a party that I got accepted because you just submitted your comments, right? It's not the right time now. You have to, again, at this time when they give you the commands, try to write another cover letter, right? Here you can write again all the contributions, and here you can say how you make the changes, right? And then alongside with your manuscript, send your cover letter. And don't forget the deadlines, all right? Don't ever forget the deadlines. Don't do these things, then you're not still rejected. Yeah, don't pass deadline. I spoke about it. Planning a party, I also told you, please don't be super happy because you didn't get rejected first. You have to wait a little bit more. But after you get the acceptance, you want to say it loud to everyone. What is the purpose of writing a paper and publishing? Because you want to be recognized, isn't it? If you get acceptance and you don't tell anybody, you hide it, nobody would ever hear you as an academician, right? Being in academia means to have that voice, and people would judge you. You remember, they trust your words based on your outcome. So once that you have that outcome, please openly, loudly tell everyone that you succeeded There is no way to hide it. This is not about being humble. If you tell it out, for example, if you have LinkedIn, you have ResearchGate, you have academia, you have ORCID, you have all these other social media, professional social media, you can later on after acceptance upload it. Okay, if you upload your work, you will get more citations. People see your work better. People will recognize you. Okay. Once that they give you the acceptance, your paper still is not online. Okay. It means that they prepared a hard copy. Probably they are going to prepare the hard copy and they would send you their final version of your work. Here, you must check the language, all the spelling, everything one more time carefully, because once that it is online, there is no way back. They don't take any paper back anytime. There is only one time that they would find that this paper was published elsewhere, that these days they don't do because we have other tools like Turnitin that we can initially understand if this paper was published elsewhere or not. But there is no way to take it out. If there is a mistake in that, it would remain there forever. Okay, even after 200, 300, 500 years, it would remain online. So make sure that there is no mistake in your paper. And the things that you shouldn't do after acceptance, yeah, don't change your manuscript. If there is a mistake in a spelling in one word, one letter, for example, if it is a spelling, just correct that one, right? But you cannot make a paragraph change, a change of one paragraph. You cannot, right? Because they already approved it for the publication, for the hard copy publication. They got all the bureaucratical things for sending your paper online for that version. They cannot change it. So you also don't have to think that if you were able to publish your work here, now you are just like a first-class scientist and after a few years they are going to give you the Nobel Prize. No, you are just on the process. Okay. And don't forget, just to carry on, once that you do the very first step, it would be easy for you to do the second paper and your third paper get published. Okay. And again, I cannot emphasize on this more. Easy reading for the editor and for the reviewer is hard writing for you, right? So how you can perfect your writing? By reading a lot. Again, so from the beginning I told you, if you want to have a paper, you always have to read a lot. I told you on my very first slide, have that dedication of reading about 1 hour, let's say, a day to read. By reading, I don't mean reading newspaper. Read academic papers, journal papers, and you will see that you become successful. That tip of the iceberg is your outcome, is the paper that you present in conferences, is the paper that you get published, is the book chapter that you come out with, right? People would not see the whole mountain under the water, which you spend like 6 months to get that paper published, right? They would see only that outcome. So don't get discouraged. Just go on. You are on the right path. And by this, I would like to close my presentation here and open up the Q&A session if any questions.
So I will moderate the chat if people want to put their questions in chat, or if you'd like to ask a question, maybe just use the reactions and the raise your hand
I
Just,
don't. Okay, how I can come back to the slide?
oh, well,
I
maybe
want to see.
turn off the shared at the bottom.
Okay.
Turn off shared. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, I had some participation here. I couldn't see them.
Oh, I was bringing them
Thank
up.
you so much, Doctor, for all your helps. Okay, guys, you can ask your questions if you have any. I hope that this was a fruitful session for you, and at least I could encourage you to start thinking about your writing.
Well, and I will say that it becomes a habit. So I have to catch myself sometimes thinking, oh, that'd be a good research project. Oh, that'd be a good research project. And how I promised that I wouldn't write any research grants this year. But, you know, reading a lot and thinking about what you're doing and how that can be approached from a research lens really is important. For enhancing what you're doing as graduate students. And I know that we have some faculty members here and we have some students here at the master's and the PhD level. So, you know, it's good to be thinking about opportunities. And as I was saying earlier, that one of the things that really um, sets a graduate student apart when they are applying for funding through SHRC, which is coming up in October for doctoral students, or December for master students, or OGS, is that you are publishing and getting information out there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, it looks like we may not have questions, but there's so much information. So um, I will take the start and end off of the recording and should be able to circulate it today or tomorrow. I wanted to say thank you very much, Dr. Shirin, for sharing your wisdom and your experience. I know that publishing for the first time is something that's very, can be very intimidating. And so I think, you know, I really appreciate you having the session, and hopefully our students will find it helpful as they're planning their own writing.
I am always available for every student if they have any questions, if they need any guide. Of course, the best guide is the supervisor, but if they need any help, I am always available for any one of them who wants to come back and just share their questions, and I can respond them back in the shortest time possible. I am always available for them.